What's up, everybody? Welcome once again. This is Syracuse football postgame, presented by Krause Health, the exclusive healthcare partner for Syracuse athletics. You got Brent Axe in Syracuse, New York. You got Emily Leiker in Raleigh, North Carolina. First time that Syracuse took it outdoors this year after 5 straight games inside, 4 at the JMA Wireless Dome, a 5th at Allegiant Stadium in Vegas. And they take it outside. And maybe that's why this game was so nutty. But Syracuse wins 24-17. They are 5-1 with a bye week ahead and a big game looming against 6-0 Pittsburgh on Thursday Night Football. That'll come on October 24th, but Syracuse will go into its second bye week. Before that, Pitt has a bye as well, so we'll have plenty of time to hype that one up. But this one was all about turnovers, Emily, as Syracuse cashed in 3 NC State turnovers into 21 points. It's the most points off turnovers Syracuse has had in a game in about 20 years. And they needed it, given that their offense had some opportunities in the first half, just couldn't cash in all those possessions. But the defense certainly came through and gave Kyle McCord, who had a 6th straight 300-yard game in a Syracuse uniform. By the way, no Syracuse quarterback has ever done that, so that streak continues. He found Jackson Meeks wide open tonight. And as we'll talk about, Emily, the officiating in this game was pull your hair out frustrating. In person, on TV, however you took this one in. But the story of this game was clearly those turnovers, and Syracuse cashed them in. 3 turnovers equaled 21 points.
Yeah, you had the Derek McDonald forced fumble to the Justin Barron recovered fumble, the Devin Grant forced fumble to the David Omopariola recovery, and then, of course, that Justin Barron 53-yard return on that interception late game. I mean, for all of the things, the chunk plays, whatever that we want to talk about with the defense still needing to improve, like, this was a great game for the defense. Like, they really stepped up. Like, the offense was not moving in the first half, was not getting things done. And the defense gave them the ball back repeatedly in that second half to make up for that, and in good field position most of the time, too. It was red zone takeaways. It was in Syracuse territory takeaways. Justin Barron, I think, this is certainly the best game of his season, if not maybe his career here at Syracuse. And we talked to him a little bit post-game. He said as he was walking in that he was tired. I can imagine so after that performance.
He was working out there for sure.
Yeah. Luckily, he gets to sleep on the plane ride home. So, but yeah, I mean, the turnovers certainly were the story of this game and really guaranteed Syracuse the victory, or lifted it to the victory.
And Emily, it's a defense that gave up 41 points in an overtime game to UNLV last week. No Kevin Jobity, who had been playing great on that defensive line. Tank Wilson, we find out yesterday from Fran Brown, both Jobity and Wilson likely out for the season, in the words of the head coach. Barry Buxton also not available for this game. We'll see what his status is coming out of the bye week. So you had a defense that's got a little more depth than usual than in what we've seen in recent years, Emily. But when you're taking those guys out of the mix, and to Elijah Robinson's credit, they have rotated a lot of guys in on that defensive line. So, the Rashard Perrys of the world and some of the guys that had an opportunity to step up in this game had been on the football field. They weren't running out there, wide-eyed and not knowing what the situation was. But you take those 2 guys off the defensive line who had high snap counts, have been graded well in recent games for Syracuse. You're starting to push that depth, and Syracuse fans were starting to get a little deja vu in this one as injuries have piled up in recent years. Look, that's football. Everybody loses guys. Oregon lost a big defensive tackle right before this game. I mean, it's going to happen, especially once you start getting into the middle of October here. But the defense, people were kind of looking at him saying, how are they going to step up in this one? And they step up with those turnovers. Now, you brought up the chunk plays that Syracuse gave up there. Yeah, that's a concern. You had a 70-yard plus touchdown when everybody on the defense had a shot at that guy and missed a tackle. And, those things are going to happen. But they also, NC State, got a huge assist from the officials in this game. And, I mean, look, it just has to be said how inept ACC officials were in this game. 2 major calls in this game that are just puzzling. One was a 75-yard touchdown for NC State where you have a player clearly step out of bounds. Now, what they said, on that touchdown from Noah Rogers was that he was pushed out of bounds and allowed to come in and reestablish himself. I mean, Emily, Jaden Bellamy barely touched him. Right?
Yeah.
For that to be called is a joke. And for them to go to replay and establish that as a touchdown, I can't even put into words what a joke that is. And it feels like every week there is some glaring call from ACC officials. You can go back to the Miami-Virginia Tech game, and I mean, pick any ACC game you want, and they're screwing something like that up. The other major call in this game, and so that gives NC State points that they don't deserve, frankly. The other major call that gave NC State points was the field goal, where they said that Syracuse was lined up over the snapper when replay clearly showed that was not the case. And NC State, instead of putting a field goal on the board, gets another opportunity and scores a touchdown. So here you have officials that are not only missing calls and making mysterious calls, they're scoring plays that are giving NC State points that they didn't earn in this case. So hard to get around that. Syracuse found a way around that. Syracuse earned this win in all the ways we've discussed and some others we'll get into. But you just hate to see a game that is so stained by not only those calls, but I mean, Emily, in the fourth quarter, people were ready to pull their hair out with the officials going back to the replay and what's going on down there. Like, man, Jim Phillips is just that meme of the dog sitting there watching the flames burn. This is fine. When he looks at his officials right now, it's bad. And it's frankly, it's embarrassing for the league.
Yeah, I'm not one often to speak up on the officiating. I let you take that. I know that's a crusade that you have. I tend to go the coach's route of, and the refs are doing their job, good or bad, whatever. But this game was atrocious. Like, this game was really bad. The out of bounds touchdown was just awful. And that was one, like, I think people misinterpreted my tweet, because I had already tweeted once being like, that was out of bounds, like that's going to get called back. And then when I had to tweet about the score, I was like, oh, like I think I'll look at it again. I knew that he was out of bounds, but I wanted to look back and see why they said that he was like reestablishing himself and had been pushed out of bounds. And it was so silly. It was like he barely got touched. So that was ridiculous. And then yes, those final few minutes in the fourth quarter, I was like, we all need to go home. This game, let's just yank the plug on this game and like get out of here, because nothing else is happening and we're just driving ourselves insane here. So certainly a very tough look. Obviously it's a little bit easier for Syracuse, I think, coming out on the side that they did and obviously winning the game. Whereas if they lose the game, I think that stuff gets harped on a lot more, but it'll still be harped on.
Emily, you were there in Raleigh. You mentioned Justin Barron said he was tired coming out of this one. What were some of the other things that stood out to you from the players and Fran Brown as they spoke after this game?
Yeah, I think one thing that a lot of people wanted to hear about, I know because my Twitter mentions were a light with it. I was going to ask regardless, but I know everyone wanted to hear about it, was the 4th and 7 decision to try for it there at the end of the game instead of going to the field for the field goal. And, Fran basically said like it was going to be a 2-score game no matter what. And I wanted to push our guys there. I wanted to try and get the 7 points on the board instead of just the 3. I think that's an answer that you can take either way and like go either way on. I think it's a fine answer. Like, sure, if you're going to go for it, like punch it and go hard. And their special teams haven't been the best this season. So like, do you even gamble it there and like risks a blocked field goal and like them returning it all the way down the field? And, he did say, he was like, I also wasn't thinking that they were going to drive 96 yards down the field on us right after that and go score another touchdown of their own or a field goal, whatever came after that. But that was the big play that I know everyone wanted to hear about in the decision making. And I think people will have different reactions to that. I know people in general already had different reactions to calling that one way or the other, but that was Fran's answer.
We have seen the first real scrutiny of Fran Brown in that sense. And they won the game and they're 5-1, so it'll dissipate in a way. But there's been other calls during the year, of course, and he's mentioned certain time management things that he's working on. And I think in that case, it did scream to take the points. But Emily, as that comes out of my mouth, see, here's the complication in this. There's no such thing as take the points with Syracuse, because they have a kicker who has been inconsistent. And Jaden O missed a 43-yarder. He made a 32-yarder. He made all his extra points tonight, but it's still shaky. We have seen kicks blocked this year. We have seen a special teams that needs a lot of work. So take the points. I get why you go for it there. Earlier in the game, they go for it on 4th and 5. I agreed with that call. It felt like they should go for it there for a myriad of reasons. But that 4th and 7, I feel like, yeah, you take the points. You're on the road. You're up 27-14. Weird things can happen, which they almost did in this game. NC State puts up the late touchdown, and they were held to a field goal. And then Syracuse has failed to field an onside kick this year, as they did against Georgia Tech. So when NC State lights up for that onside kick, you're ready for anything to happen. And they actually had to jump up and get that one. There was a moment of tension here. So that's where I agree with you, Emily, and I think you make a good point in that, for Fran to say we had to go for it in this circumstance for this reason, take the points doesn't exist with this kicking staff, unfortunately, at this point. I'll give Brady Denneberg this, though. He had a heck of a tackle on the sideline in this game.
He laid a shoulder on that return man.
It reminded me of Pat McAfee back in the day when he was laying dudes out on those punts and kick returns. So special teams, again, had a mixed bag. We mentioned one call completely out of their hands, which was ridiculous, but it's one thing that's certainly going to have to continue to be an emphasis for this coaching staff going forward, but particularly in the bye week with some time to clean some things up.
Yeah, I mean, we really didn't see the punt team out there at all. Jack took that one at the end of the first half. That was kind of a throwaway anyway. It was just to kill the clock, and they needed to get the ball out there. And right, that was the issue that we had last week, was with the punt plays. So until we see those again, I won't be like, oh, everything's good. But like what they did today was a better bag of results special team wise than last week was, just in like a general sense, I think.
Last week in Vegas, Emily, Oronde Gadsden emerged. He had 10 catches for 142 yards. It was a career high for him after a game against Holy Cross when he was pretty quiet. A catch for 4 yards, and everybody's like, "Ooh, what the heck's wrong with him?" OG and Trevor Pena were targeted early and often. We mentioned, Syracuse had several offensive opportunities, right? So they drive up the field. We mentioned the 4th and 5, they didn't convert. There was a first possession, 16 plays, ends up being a field goal, which, you got points, but you want 16 plays and all that time to result in a touchdown. There was a sequence where Syracuse went penalty, sack, missed field goal, the one we mentioned from Jaden O, and they did score a touchdown on one of their possessions in the first half. So a lot of offensive drives came up short there. But they were taking what the defense was giving them. Payne was open, OG was open. But as the game goes along, particularly in the second half, Emily, I feel like the receiver that Kyle McCord trusts the most now is Jackson Meeks. Meeks, huge day in this one today. His numbers for tonight, 11 catches, 116 yards, had a great touchdown. He averaged 10 yards a catch. He was targeted 14 times in this game by Kyle McCord. So while all those receivers I mentioned and a couple that I didn't, Daryl Gill Jr. had some nice catches. Justice Ross Simmons was actually targeted in this game tonight.
Was targeted.
He was targeted. He's getting there, although he didn't have big numbers in this one. But Jackson Meeks, to me, has become wide receiver one. In the eyes of Kyle McCord, it's the guy he looks for first and seems to trust the most. And he fought for some big first downs in this game.
Yeah, Meeks, this is like back-to-back, or I guess not last game, but he had the huge game against Holy Cross. So now we've had 2 of these really big performances from him, not to bring it back to the 4th and 7 again, but he's the one that McCord targeted there on that play because he had converted things earlier in the game. His touchdown was on a 4th and 2, I believe, when he scored that. And he said he took some ownership on that play. He was like, I should have known better, like where the first down marker was. I should have made an extra push for it. I should have reached for it. But yeah, Meeks has been incredible. I think there was some, not doubt, but I think we were just kind of waiting to see, this was a guy that didn't really play at Georgia. He was mostly a special teams guy, or playing scout team for their practices. And so coming in, it was like, okay, you have this veteran who was on a team like Georgia, but you just don't necessarily have the game reps to show like what he can do. And we've really seen that through this first few weeks of the season.
So whoever it is that he trusts, Emily, Kyle McCord, 6 straight games with 300 plus yards, 346 in this game. He's the only Syracuse quarterback to do this. We're halfway through a season here, and it feels like you're already kind of taken for granted that this guy's just going to do this. He's going to have 300 yards, and he's going to. You have a quarterback like McCord, you're going to be in a position to win. He's not making big mistakes. He's not throwing a lot of picks. He did have to throw on the run. I feel like the run blocking can be better. I feel like the pass blocking can be better. But bottom line is, you feel great about who your quarterback is. If you're Fran Brown, if you're a Syracuse fan, no matter what slice of life you're from here, like McCord's just making the plays. And he is a quarterback that he's not going to lose you the game. And through 6 games, you can say that. It's not perfect. There's certainly, things he can take back. And, we can go through it with a fine-tooth comb here. But every game, we see 300 yards. We see great throws. That touchdown throw he had to Amari Hatcher was terrific. That throw
really
to Meeks he had was terrific. I can go through 3 or 4 other throws in this game that are just on the mark here. So he's almost, I don't even know what to say anymore. It's just like, yep, check the box. McCord had another terrific game for Syracuse. He has not had a game yet that could cost Syracuse the game. He's had some moments, some throws that he'd like back, but every game you walk away from, and it's such a thing to take for granted, but it's what Syracuse has. He just keeps you in every game. He makes all the throws. He makes all the reads. And he has just been steady Eddie for Syracuse. I mean, that's the biggest compliment I can give him at this point. But game in and game out, Emily, to see a Syracuse quarterback just 300 yards like it's nothing. And he had 42 passes in this game. He had 63 in the last game. And Syracuse is running this RPO offense where he kind of has the option here. And people would like to see the running game pick up a little bit. I understand that. But, I mean, come on. 6 straight 300-yard games. This is just incredible to watch what McCord is doing and the effect he's having on this offense.
Yeah, well, and the point I wanted to make about the receivers that I forgot a couple minutes ago is, like, we saw a lot of contested catches from Gadsden and Pena early in this game. And as much as that is them and their talent as wide receivers, it is also McCord being able to throw it in those really tight spots and throw it really accurately, so that when Gadsden has guys trying to swat the ball out of his hands on both sides of him, like, he knows that ball is going to come to a very specific spot and hit him in a very specific spot on his hands, on his chest, wherever, and he can get that. And that is very much both of them. It's not just McCord throwing great balls. It's not just Gadsden and Pena and Meeks making great catches. That is a unity thing, and again, speaks to their chemistry.
Emily, we got a lot of comments from our Syracuse Sports Insiders that we're going to get to. We not only have a voicemail from the state of Florida, we have another voicemail. Someone was given the secret voicemail line and is a passionate Syracuse Sports Insider, was in attendance in Raleigh tonight, wanted to leave us a voicemail. So we're going to get to that coming up. But being a Syracuse Sports Insider means you can text me directly with your questions, comments, opinions. The opinions about the officiating were certainly fun to read during the game from the Syracuse Sports Insiders. And to become a part of our Syracuse Sports Insider community, all you have to do is text the word orange to 315-847-3895. If you were in Vegas and a part of our Syracuse Sports Insider meetup, it was incredible to see all of you, to meet all of you, and it's a growing community of passionate Syracuse sports fans where, again, you can text me directly. I send you guys texts, and the back-and-forth community that we have, especially during games, has been incredible to see, and you guys had a lot to say about this one here. So what do we say? We jump right in and see what the Syracuse Sports Insiders had to say. From Christian, who says, big win, beat NC State and the ACC officials, get healthy on the bye week, and then attack Pitt the following week. So, yeah, Emily, all of a sudden, Thursday, so it's not that Syracuse hasn't had a couple of big games already. They've been in prime time a bunch. Friday night against Stanford, Friday night against UNLV. It feels like there's been that Georgia Tech game felt big earlier this year with Georgia Tech doing well so early, and Syracuse has beaten 2 ranked teams this year. But you got 6-0 Pitt, 5-1 Syracuse, Thursday night game at Pitt. Syracuse does not do well in that building. They do not do well against Pitt in general. So there's a lot of things Syracuse has to overcome. it's this Pitt team you're playing, but history creeps into these things. And look, Pitt had a nice win today over Cal. And Holstein is great to watch. What a story he's been for Pitt. They're 6-0 for the first time since Dan Marino was the quarterback. And all credit to what Pat Narduzzi has done. But I walked away from that game today saying they're beatable. I think Syracuse can beat that team. There's certain things they have to do and clean up from this one in order to do that. But I think if I'm going to play Pittsburgh, coming out of a bye week is a great opportunity for Syracuse in that game. So little sneak preview of Pitt, and it's on people's minds as Christian's text was there. But I don't know if you got a chance to watch Pitt in your travels today against poor Cal that keeps losing these close games.
I know.
But I watched that game and I said, okay, it's going to be tough, but I think Syracuse can certainly win that game.
Yeah, I didn't get to watch too much of today's game. I did flick it on for a couple minutes, but I've obviously watched them in previous weeks. And, most of their games have been really close games this year, as have Syracuse's games, right? Like, these are two teams who play opponents incredibly close. The two things that stand out is I think it's West Virginia and Cincinnati were both games where Pitt came back in the second half, if not the fourth quarter, to win those games. So that is going to be a game that goes down to the wire, probably very similarly to the UNLV game. I don't know if it'll be quite as high scoring. We kind of thought this one was going to be higher scoring, and it did not end up that way. But that game is going to be interesting. Like you said, it's always a weird one down at Acrisure Stadium, and weather wise and all that stuff. And again, that'll be another outdoors one. So should be interesting with that for sure.
Syracuse is 5-1. They're 2 points away from being 6-0. That Stanford game, which was a Friday night, but back-to-back road wins for Syracuse, back-to-back primetime games for Syracuse, where if you kind of caught Syracuse on flipping around watching college football, you're in one of the four squares on YouTube TV, or just you see and come across Syracuse, they're starting to impress people in prime time, which wasn't always the case in recent years. When you're faltering and losing in primetime games, at least Syracuse and that will be the third straight game that is an 8:00 kick or later Eastern time, or actually I think that starts at 7:30, but prime time past 7:00 games when you've really got a big audience that is checking out that game. It's another opportunity for Fran Brown to keep doing his thing. As Gabe notes here, what should SU work on in the bye week for Pitt, who, as we were talking about, didn't look their best today? It's interesting, and I know you asked him to clarify this in postgame, Emily, but when Fran was on the ACC network after, he was mentioning that Syracuse still had, as he deemed it, kind of a losing mentality in certain facets of the game. And what he cited was late in the game, there were players that were turning around and were engaging fans. Fran wasn't happy about that, basically saying, this isn't over. What are you guys doing? This is still a game. So there's still some things that he's trying to instill in these guys, as he put it, kind of a winning mentality. But I know that he mentioned that in postgame, right?
Yeah, he just clarified, obviously he doesn't think they're losers or anything like that. And that what I took from it is that really he just wants them to be a little bit more grown up and composed in those moments. And obviously, football, when you get high, you get really high, and when you get low, you tend to get really low. And so in a game like this, that stuff happens, and he doesn't want it to happen. He wants them to act like they've been there before and remember that they're representing the S, which is something we hear a lot from them. Mm-hmm. So it was really just little things. He's there are still little things that we are doing that are finalizing this culture of this program and finalizing what we need to do to be contenders moving forward.
Frankie says, tell you what, that's a game Syracuse loses last year or in years past. Huge step forward for this program. 2 straight road wins and a big tilt at our old friend Pitt coming up. That's definitely a game we see them lose, find a way to lose. Dino Babers mismanages the clock. Something happens. But, Emily, I think that harkens back to having a guy like McCord. It's Johnny on the spot with the turnovers. It's executing on those things. It's overcoming adversity, officials included. But, look, Syracuse gave up some big plays. And you just said it. You can either get really high or really low. It can sink your battleship. You can go into a kind of here we go again mentality. One thing that Dart has put into play, to go back to Gabe's comment from a moment ago about what Dart has done for Syracuse and Fran Brown, there is a mentality that this team has in games that something's different in these spots. They still make mistakes and they still have a lot to clean up for a 5-1 team. Don't get me wrong. But another thing that Fran said, they showed his post-game speech on the ACC network, Emily, and he talked about how October and into November is a time for, and he left it to the team to fill in the blank for the word, and the word was contenders. We want to be contenders, right? That Pitt game comes right up to the top of the list of, okay, here's your opportunity to beat one of the few remaining undefeated teams, not only in the ACC, with Miami being the other one, but in college football in general, with that list dwindling down here. Timmy C says, the team overcame a lot tonight. Brutal officiating, questionable game management decisions, and still won a tough conference road game. That really says something. Lacey says, this team is so far ahead of any Dino era team, kind of continuing the theme here. They are far from perfect, but there is solid effort and camaraderie on this squad. Jeff says, Fran went up to the NC State quarterback and gave him a big hug and a smile. Class move, wondering if he recruited him. And then he notes, I've been waiting 25 years for a quarterback like Kyle McCord. Too bad it's just for 1 year. Emily, it feels like Fran has recruited a lot of these guys in some way, shape, or form, right? Or has seen them on the recruiting trail. And Bailey's a nice player. He's a good quarterback. I think the future's bright at that position for NC State. I liked what I saw out of him, and I think NC State fans should be excited about him. But yeah, Fran Brown, he gets around a little bit on the recruiting trail and seems to know a lot of these guys.
Yeah, he did say Monday that he had recruited Bailey and knew him from that. And he had high praise for him post-game, too. He was like, that kid's going to be a top quarterback in the ACC if he sticks around and is here in the next few years. And certainly, like, we saw him make some really big plays. Like, he had some big-time throws. Now, there were also a lot of them that were overthrown and stuff like that. And those are mistakes that I think you see rookies make a lot, especially those young guys. But, yeah, CJ Bailey, that's a name you're going to hear in the ACC if he stays with the Wolfpack.
Emily, before I play a couple voicemails here, there's one thing I did want to note per Gabe's question about what you work on in the bye week. LaQuinn Allen had a great touchdown tonight. It was almost a reminder of the UNLV touchdown. Not quite as much of dragging a dude into the end zone, but a tough, grind it out, move your feet, push somebody in the end zone type of touchdown that Syracuse needed, right? But NC State had, I believe, the 15th rated rush defense in the ACC. Not great. It was an opportunity for Syracuse to run the ball. They ended up with 78 rushing yards on the night. LaQuinn Allen had 91 yards. They lost some yards on a sack and a couple things. But I don't know. How do I frame this? Like, I feel like the running game can be better. I feel like the run blocking can be better. You know, Savion Washington had a couple of penalties in the red zone tonight. But when LaQuinn Allen's got to get in the end zone, he gets there. Like, it's almost like quality over quantity. Like, they don't get a ton of yards, but when they need a touchdown, they need a play from LaQuinn Allen. You've seen Willis didn't have as big of a night as he did against UNLV, but it feels like there's definitely some room for improvement in the running game. Is that the best way to put it, or how would you characterize it?
Yeah, you know, I think it's tough because, again, like I do think there's room for improvement, but also I think a lot of people are still stuck in like last year when they had to run the ball because running the ball was all they had. And so they did it a lot. And in the Tucker years when like that was their offense, and like, it's just not their offense anymore. Kyle McCord throwing the ball is the offense. And so, yes, of course, like, like you want to see more. And I get that. And yes, there's things that need to improve. And, you know, like today there was a lot of different mixes of the O-line going on that I'm going to need to watch and see who was in there. Like, you know, we had Wollabob got some time in there today. Jacob Bradford was in a lot. Josh Aloa. So that was going on. But with the run game, I'm kind of just like, you know, like you said, like when they put LaQuinn in, like he does something and it's good and you get it going. But like, I don't see them leaning too much heavier into it unless they absolutely need to, because the pass game's working.
When it's an RPO based offense, and Kyle McCord even said that this week, Emily, that We asked him about, you threw the ball 63 times last week against UNLV. So, well, that's kind of deceiving because of the amount of short throws, quick throws,
Right.
throws that essentially are runs, right? Just those dump offs to Pena or OG or whatever the case may be. So the running game has become a complement. But yeah, the pro style offense we heard so much about, it is a throw first offense. And with a quarterback like Kyle McCord, that is the offense. We're 6 games in. I think that's what we're seeing. But the running game has been important for this team in those spots, as we've seen from Allen and Willis last week against UNLV. All right, couple of voicemails, Emily. Now we have one from our friend from Florida, who thankfully, by the way, a lot of people are asking about Rock and Ron. The hurricane did go through where Rock and Ron lives, and thankfully he's fine. Everything's okay, and our guy's doing great. So I appreciate everybody that was asking about Rock and Ron, and they watched the game tonight, and here's what he had to say.
Hey, Brent, it's Dominic from North Carolina.
Actually, wrong one. Sorry. That's our other friend, Dominic. Let's play Rock and Ron's first.
Hey, Brent and Emily, Rock and Ron in Florida. I'm glad we won that game, but we left way too many points out there. Getting down in the red zone 3 times and come away with zip. The 4th time we were there, or the first time we were there, we got 3 points. And we gave up way too many. Tackling is real bad tonight. And, coverage broke down a couple times in our coverage. I'm glad we got over a week, till our game with, Pitt, because we're going to need it. Hopefully we can get our 2 starting, defensive tackles back from the injury list, and maybe, Marlo Wax will be back. That'd be great. But like I said, I'll take the win. We could have played a lot better. We got to get sharper. We're not looking as sharp as we can. And, I think, with all that said and done, by the way, what's his name? Meeks. He had a heck of a game tonight. He really looked good. He kept us in many, many times. He got us a first down. And Gasson looked good. So we are doing pretty good with what we have. And, but hey, 1 game at a time, right, boys and girls? I'll take it, like I said, until next week or, what is it? Against it anyways. I'll talk to you later. Thank you.
There he is. Rock and Ron.
3 things to hit on in response to Ron. Ron, great points, because I have things from postgame to respond back to you with on every single one. Kyle pretty much point blank said we were not good in the red zone tonight. So like they are aware that there were issues there tonight, and that's something they're going to look back on film. He was like, I did not think we were good there at all. We were really struggling. Justin pinned the tackling stuff, the breakthrough, the second level on that linebacking group, and what's going on there. And right, like that's a group we've had concerns about ever since Marlowe went down, and they're about to get Marlowe back. Pitt game, maybe the Virginia Tech game, based on what Fran said on Thursday, which was he has about 2 more weeks. I saw him pregame. He did do some warm-ups and was out there moving around just on his own with the linebackers coach, Robert Wright, but then stepped away when they did team warm-ups and was in sweats. So that's kind of the tackling thing and all of that. And then what was the third thing? I had one more thing. Oh, I think just the general, like, they're not playing to their level. Like that, everyone said that post game. I talked to Dan, I talked to Jackson Meeks, I talked to Fran, Justin, Kyle. Like everyone was like, we are not playing up to our full potential. And it's not that they think they're playing bad. And I don't think any of us think that they're playing bad. If you're judging the product as a whole, we're not like bad. There are bad things in the play, and there are bad mistakes that need to be fixed. And they know that. And again, like, I think the ownership of that is something very different than how these post-game pressers have gone in the past 2 years when I've been here, when it's been just, I don't know, we'll look at it, blah, 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 blah. It's like the point blank ownership of it and acknowledgement of it, I think, is a big change and a good change.
Usually the bye week comes at a good time when you need to rest and you need to get guys healthy, which is the case in some ways, but it feels like this is a better bye week to focus on things like that. They know what's wrong. Let's get in the film room. Let's tweak it. Let's correct it. Let's work on special teams. And they know exactly how to attack it, as opposed to, like you said, in previous years, it's like, I don't know, I'm going to watch the film and figure out what it is, right? Dominic, the Dahmer, was given the secret voicemail line and a live call from Raleigh shortly after victory. Here's what he said.
Hey, Brent, it's Dominic from North Carolina, just leaving Carter Finley here in Raleigh. It was a fun game, nail biter at the end, a lot more exciting finish than we would hope, but fun to see a win nonetheless. My son got to see his Syracuse win for the first time. You guys know I don't live in the 315, so this is a special thing for us. Only thing I've got to say is I do not like our zone defense. A non-freshman quarterback, would have eaten it up tonight. But the defense did what it had to do, and we got to win on the road. And it's really difficult to win on the road. So I'll take it. Thanks, Brent.
Dom in North Carolina, one of the more passionate Syracuse fans, the mailman riding around with his Syracuse flag down there in Carolina. The yeah buts are flowing from the voicemail. People are like the win, but are seeing things that need to be corrected, as the players reiterated themselves in postgame as well. So interesting that halfway through the year here, and some big games coming, Syracuse does have some flaws that they still need to correct. There was a lot of discussion from the texters about rushing 3 versus rushing 4. And I know they mix it up and try and hide some coverages there, but they had a lot more success when they rushed 4 in this one, getting after Bailey. And Dominic mentioned some zone coverage there. So things to clean up here, Emily, but it's a 5-1 football team. And while the optimism was riding high before the year, I don't know how many people would have put that bet down that Syracuse would be 5-1 at this point, which they are. Speaking of bets, by the way, as we wrap up here, Emily, a lot of people were freaking out before this game because.
Oh my God, you guys, we need to chill. We need to chill out.
You guys
freaking out. I was like,
this is why you don't bet on sports. Okay. I know you're going to anyway, but I'm just going to say it. So the point spread dropped from 4.5 to 1.5, which that's a big drop. That's a head scratcher. I get why some people are like, what's going on here? That was a reaction to the injuries we knew about. And then I've got all these bettors on my timeline, Emily. Well, the sharps and they're adjusting to the line. I'm just like, and nothing happened. People were like, oh my God, is Kyle McCord not there? Like, what happened? Why did the point spread drop? And that was a fun half hour or so. People were just freaking out about the point spread. So
yeah,
all was well. Syracuse, if you had Syracuse -1.5, -4.5, whatever it was, you got the win, the cover, and you're cashing out.
Yeah, and we always tell you who is not there as soon as we know they're not there. And if I'm not tweeting that someone's not there, it means they're probably there at the game. I thought I was going to have to tweet like a full list of everyone I was seeing on the field at one point. So
my goodness.
Goodness. The start of a very long night that I am probably about to get kicked out, so I probably need to wrap up. But
you guys, you're the best. Well, Emily, thank you. Great coverage as always. We'll be looking for more on syracuse.com. Appreciate you joining us here on the pod. Thanks to Krause Health, the exclusive healthcare partner for Syracuse Athletics. Thanks to our Syracuse Sports Insiders, of course, for your great comments. And we will catch you next time, not only here on Syracuse Football Postgame, but on Syracuse Sports. A little bye week coming, but still plenty of coverage to come on this now 5-1 Orange squad as they take down NC State 24-17 in Raleigh. You guys have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you next time.